Hello, welcome to Cybersecurity Unlocked, episode 7. I am delighted and privileged to be joined by Gene Yu. He is a cyber entrepreneur. He is the co-founder of Blackpanda, based out of Hong Kong, delivering digital forensic incident response across Asia. He has also spent 8 years in the military in counterterrorism, with 2 tours in the Philippines and 2 tours in Iraq. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks so much for coming down, especially on a weekend. I know you're probably got other things you'd rather be doing than this, but it's great to see you. So yeah, I mean, obviously a strange year for most. I mean, how has it been for you guys at Blackpanda?
So certainly it's been challenging. With COVID, for us, we took some precautionary measures for sure. I like to say that crisis, the key to success in crisis is in the preparation, right? Yeah. It actually says it on this large sign at at the U.S. military survival school. Preparation is the key to survival. And so when it occurred, even though we knew that cybersecurity was going to increase as a problem in the COVID environment with work from home, we took precautionary measures and reduced OpEx. Retrenched a few folk. And then we went into the COVID kind of main period, I would say, in Q1 and Q2. In Asia, we saw not a drop off in cyber attack. I think that's very very key to highlight. Yeah. More companies concerned about wanting to wait until after it was over. Right, mm-hmm. A lot of hopeful kind of optimism that maybe this thing would blow through in maybe 3 or 4 months, and then wanting to re-engage with our service at that time. Mm. So there's a bit of a drop-off, I would say, in the first half of this year. And then now I think we're seeing both Hong Kong and Singapore realize this is not going away anytime soon. Yeah. Cyber risk continues to mount, and now actually they're really starting to feel the work-from-home attacks coming in. And so business is picking up for us quite a bit here in Q3. Yeah,
that's great. Mm. And now I remember when it all first started, everybody was talking about it, I'll be over in a few weeks. And it just goes to show like how ill prepared we were at the time. And I read this morning that World Health Organization says that it's going to be we're not going to get rid of this for probably another 2 years. So
right.
Yeah. It's really like interesting. Like all of the training that you've had sort of in the military kind of perfectly translates now into the business world where you can go right. Okay, let's. This is our plan. This is how we're gonna manage this. So yeah. I mean, was that sort of an advantage to you? Do you think?
I think for interestingly enough. Crisis ends up bringing a lot of things into clarity and focus because your options are so limited.
Yeah. Right.
Sometimes there can be this aspect of how do you call it, like selection overload, or just saturation, right? Just overload of too many choices, right? And being paralyzed, by those all the decisions that you could make. And so for me, actually, I did actually feel some aspect of optimism because of many things I was juggling about where to expand the business or where to be more aggressive in the region, which markets we wanted to go to, et cetera. And when COVID came, I just deleted all of those off the table, right? And it made things very clear. Let's focus on the basics, get the fundamentals in, get revenue, stable in these areas, 1, 2, 3. And streamline our business. So, for me, actually, in some ways, I found comfort in the fact that there was a crisis because it returned me to a space that I felt most comfortable making decisions, right? Really? Of just limited options and just saying, oh, well, I only have these 2 choices, so pick one and just go gung-ho all at it, right? It kind of gives a little bit of freedom in that sense of not self-doubting, like the choice that you made because you don't have any choices, right? Yeah.
And how did you kind of pass that down to to your team? I nearly said troops then, but to your team in the company, because obviously, being a business owner, you've got lots of voices that obviously you've hired to get their counsel and direction of the company. Were there any that sort of panicked or said we need to do this, or how did you approach that?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that for the most part, again, because everybody understood that we needed to streamline and hunker down. I call the whole time period Corona winter, You know, I'm a big Game of Thrones fan, and I kind of joke around and wonder if now, when COVID came and the economic downturn that we're all experiencing now, was that his metaphor for how, you know, market cycles work, right? You know, so that the long summers and the longest winters, you know, sort of thing. So I joke around and call it Corona winter.
Right.
So for me, my initial town hall when you know, I realized that this was really on. We started crisis planning in January when we saw COVID starting to spread around a little bit in Asia. I want to get ahead of it, so I set up three stages of a plan to cut OpEx and what areas we're going to streamline the company down with triggers of when that was going to occur. We ended up enacting all the way to the second stage by mid-March. So the company was early prepared. I would say that when I already started announcing that we were doing this sort of planning, just to get ahead of things. And I think that early communication and transparency was very important by way of aligning the team to understand that this was not a normal period, right? If you can imagine, you know, again, my Game of Thrones know, analogy, now there's blizzards coming, there's White Walkers coming, you know, so this is the time that, you know, we need to grip hands together and conserve our scarce food, right? And gut this thing out because, you know, we're not going to make it without each other, but we all need to sacrifice because this isn't the time of, you know, gold, you know, falling from the skies and to run outside with your buckets to catch, right? It's no longer the long summer, right? And I think that mentality helped focus the team. And more so that the early communication allowed people to, I think, emotionally and mentally prepare. I never sugarcoated that, hey, this might be over in a few months. I mean, this is completely out of your control. You know, when you know, you see some leaders, actually political leaders in the world sometimes making a lot of comments, you know, that just to get that little bit of, you know, good feeling that you just told your folks something that makes them feel good. And so they, you know, return those positive feelings. But I think a lot of leadership, a big part of leadership is delivering the hard truths, right? And I think that sort of commitment to the integrity and character of making sure that you're being honest to people because people are very intelligent, right? And so, you know, when you try to sugarcoat bad news like that, I think that's a demonstration of weak leadership. And I think that loses confidence from the team. And so for me, again, so what I'm trying to say, and to kind of sum this up, is that I think getting at it early, being very transparent, and being, to be honest, unapologetic about having to make those sort of decisions as the captain of the ship to make sure that it stays afloat. Everybody understands that if you explain it to them transparently, right? You know, it's logical and it's rational, right? So, you know.
That's it's a really interesting point because, like you say, I mean, with leadership, some can be it's at odds with, you know, people don't want to be popular, want to be the popular manager, and that sometimes is at odds with you know what's actually right. This is what we need to deliver. Yeah,
you know, and when we just touching upon that, you know, one of the things that kind of again harking from, you know, my West Point, you know, days and being a commander in the military, you know, as a leader, you're not there to be their friend. Right. I have enough friends, right? Like, you know, they're over there, right? So, and they do too as well. You know, it's not that we can't be friendly and have a, you know, a friendship relationship. And of course, I would consider a lot of my colleagues dear friends, but that's not what they need. They need a leader, right? The company needs a leader, right? And I think that's something that as a CEO or any leadership position in a company, that's very important to remember because, you know, you can't just be, you know, a group of buddies, you know, running around to get something very difficult done, a very difficult mission to get done, which is to survive this, one of the worst, you know, economic downturn situations, you know, that at least in our general lifetimes that we've seen. This isn't a time for the weak or faint-hearted, right? It's time to, you know, galvanize and steel yourself with some resolve, right?
For sure. Well, that must have been very reassuring for the team as well to kind of have, you know, those qualities in a leader. For sure.
I hope so. I hope so. I like to think so. You know, we've. You know, one of the aspects that I'm very proud of at Blackpanda is we have a very strong culture. You know, we kind of call it the ride or die culture inside the company. But, you know, we took a lot of care into writing our core values. There was a time period when the company started that, you know, it's funny as you know, there's so many stories out there about all the crazy things that happen to founders and all the type of things. And certainly at the beginning, when things get desperate, I mean, it tests your morals, right? Like certain clients, especially the field that we were in, we get asked to do a lot of funny things sometimes by clients, right? And the team actually sat down, the initial founding team, and really kind of put the spurs and said, we need to write down what our code is, right? Like, who are we, and what is going to be our guiding North Star, no matter, you know, what is going on and how crazy the storm is at sea. What is our guiding North Star to make sure that we don't deviate from our code of like who we are as and what our principles are? And so if you read our core values, they're not the typical core values that you'll read in a company, right? One of the ones that I always kind of, you know, and if people are offended by this, so be it, but, you know, I'm always a little bit snideish about when I see a core value like integrity in a company. And it's like, for me, like, yeah, what do you mean? Of course you need integrity. Like, how can you, you know, like if I think that you don't have any integrity, how can you even work here, right? So,
yeah, of course, yeah.
So for us, we try to be very specific on the core values of things that maybe you wouldn't have thought so specifically. Like our number one core value is balance, right? I believe deeply that the quality of your mind determines the quality of your decisions, and the quality of your decisions will determine the quality of your life.
Yeah.
And that is a very important message at Blackpanda, is that there is more than just this work that we're doing. It has to work in combination with your personal life, because the two are mutually tied together, right? Yeah. The better your personal life is, to be honest, the more balance you have, the better I believe you're going to contribute to the team, and vice versa, back into your personal life. Yeah. And so those are some of the aspects that, you know, we've promoted at Blackpanda is quite a bit of holiday. You know, like I've mentioned, we have a lot of public holidays over, I think it's like 25 or 26. Everybody has 4 weeks, 4 weeks off. Every Friday is technically off. Okay, most people end up working. We call those Panda days, right? Your birthday is off. Black Panda's anniversary day is off. Yeah. Because I wanted to create an environment where people knew that they were entrusted to manage their time as they saw fit. Yeah. The standards never dropped, right? Yeah. My standards are very high in the company, and can be a little bit. Can be very direct and candid about, you know, when deadlines or certain quality standards are not met, but the time is your own, and I think that's an incredible amount of a contribution to balance in somebody's psyche, of just understanding that you have a choice, right? It's option value, right? And so, you know, anyway, so what I'm trying to say is that. You know, balance being our number one core value. We've got a few others, you know, like for instance, you know, I take sincerity, you know, is a better word to describe what I think people want to say about integrity and a core value, right? Sincerity about actually doing what you say, and that's it, right? Yeah. Just having the true sincerity about what you're saying and not being loose with your words. So anyway, so the core values, I think, has been something that has helped us quite a bit through the Corona winter as well, when I talk about having that guiding North Star on our values and our principles. Every month we have an award. We, you know, because we're Black Panda, we give out a lot of panda oriented type of gifts, and we choose a different panda stuffed animal every month, and then the team members vote and cite who demonstrated a core value, you know, most clearly. Okay. And it's kind of nice to see that peer-to-peer validation, and we have a speech at the end, you know, for it and whatnot, and award out the panda. Anyway, so that's one thing that, if, you know, for any listeners, I thought was successful for me by way of getting through crisis, is coming back to those base fundamentals aspects of what do you stand for as an organization, right? Like, who are you, right? And I think defining those values and those principles are incredibly important when you're dealing with in times of uncertainty. Right? That you can always kind of reach back to that pillar and that foundation and know, I understand this. This is solid here, right? I believe in this, you know. Yeah. And if everybody is aligned on that, and we understand, again, to use my term of that North Star that's always kind of pointing in the right direction. Yeah. So long as we're moving along this route, we have confidence and belief that we'll be okay, right? Yeah. So
No, that's awesome, and it's great to get I guess your staff thinking about, or your team thinking about the values all the time, and having those kind of awards, because company values can obviously can quite often just be sort of ignored. Once they've done their introduction, they're never really sort of thought about again,
right.
Especially the bigger the company, and so it's great that that you do that. It's quite unique. Awesome. Well, I mean, I was reading up on the Blackpanda story, the origins, with real interest. I mean, tell us about how you got started with it.
Yeah. Okay. So, maybe just as a brief overview of my background. I know you gave me an introduction, but kind of starts from that a bit, right? Yeah. So, so I'm born and raised in the States. Born in Boston and grew up in California, and I grew up in Cupertino, California, which I always joke around a bit now when I talk about my background, because for most of my life, nobody's ever heard of Cupertino. And then when Apple, really blew up in the last, 10 years or so, actually, tongue-in-cheek, sometimes people will say, "Where are you from?" And I'll just say, "Cupertino," and see if they know. Because before I used to say that, I'd have to trace it. Sometimes people didn't even know where San Francisco was internationally, right? So anyway, I bring that up is because, I've been coding in Pascal and Fortran since I was like 10 or 11 years old. I grew up in the heart of Silicon Valley, right?
Right.
Both my parents are lifelong engineers. So I majored in computer science. When I decided to go to West Point, I had kind of this adventure itch, wanted to see, this is pre 9/11, right? So this is just like peacetime, and thought it'd be adventurous to go to West Point. 9/11 occurred right when I graduated in 2001, and the whole world turned upside down. It was a watershed moment, right? So, everything was no longer games, just kind of playing soldier and getting this life experience of these lessons, and it was for real. And for the next 8 years, basically went on, this American rampage to the Middle East with them. Yeah. And, I was stationed in Korea and Japan, but deployed basically worldwide. Fought twice in Iraq and twice in the Philippines. So four combat tours total. Yeah. It's quite intense. 48 months that I was a Special Forces captain. I was deployed for 44 months. Yeah. Right. So I was one of the most deployed captains, I believe, in my year. So it was quite a whirlwind. I decided to step out and see what the rest of the world had. I had a very good fortune to meet my co-founder and current chairman, Matthew Pecco. Pretty much socially, there's a little story behind that as well, but so Matthew Pecco at that time was the head of prime services at Credit Suisse, which is a very big Asia
that's
Pacific
right.
division.
Right, yeah, because I saw you tried your hand at trading as well, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. So Matt commanded the same Special Forces team I did in Okinawa, but about 20 years prior to me, right? And so we just connected, and I mean, there's more to this story, but basically after meeting him for 5 minutes, he just said, "Hey, what are you doing? I'm going to pull you out of grad school." I was at Johns Hopkins at the time. Pull you out of grad school and put me in a front office equity swaps, stock borrow loan trading seat. And so I did that for a little while, right? And for me, it was exciting. I got a chance to see the Wall Street, high finance, high flying lifestyle, and all that type of stuff. But sitting in front of 6 screens a day, that wasn't really my, it was just too much of a. It's just too jarring, coming from, running around with my hair on fire, killing dragons and bad guys, and then sitting in front of this desk for 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Right?
What was the gap from? So when did you actually finish, and then you were dumped in front of 6 screens on Wall Street?
Actually, I did have a little bit of time. There's 2 years.
Okay.
So I studied Chinese in Taiwan for a year.
Oh, cool.
And then I went to 1 year of grad school, and I basically dropped out. At that point, I was just fed up with just sitting in class, because I was used to being an operator and all these things, and so I left Credit Suisse and then joined Palantir Technologies, in 2013. That was an amazing experience for me, and I had a chance to help start up their business in Asia. So I was technically based in Singapore, but I never made it down here. I was always in Korea or the States or all over the place for them. And after that, to be honest, you can see that I was bouncing around quite a bit. I started feeling a little bit lost in my identity, which is a kind of a classic story for soldiers who are transitioning back into normal life. Yeah, civilization, right? Yeah. And it really is, jarring because there's of course so many amazing things that you learn in the military, but things are so clearly black and white in so many ways in military life, right? Whereas the world is very much gray, right? And the lines are quite blurred. And one of the things that was so clear when you're in the military is that you, at least the U.S. military, especially the U.S. military being such a operational organization, there's a very clear task and purpose, and they're able to define it so well for you, right? And for us, in retrospect now, I can make a lot of comments about the political situation, why I was, what I was doing in Iraq and all these type of things. But certainly at the time, the task and purpose is so clear for you, and you feel that you are there. It's beyond a job; it's a calling. Like I write about in that article. It was a calling, right? You wake up in the morning, and you're brushing your teeth at 5 a.m. to get ready to go, to go to work, and you're looking at yourself in the mirror, and you're like, yeah, I'm a special forces team leader. Like, I'm here to basically save the world, right? Like you have this sense of mission that is nearly unmatched by its clarity. And so coming out where you have to define that for yourself for the first time, really, it's very difficult to pinpoint that. And when I was bouncing around, very exciting to try all these different things over those 4 years. And I left when I left Palantir and I was waiting to get started. And, I decided to take a leap into a tech startup. My mother's best friend in high school, her little sister named Evelyn Zhang, was traveling for the first time after 20 years of working in a factory in China, saved up and went to a Malaysian island called Pom Pom Island, which is not far away from Sipidon, the famous diving site, and on the first night that she was there, 8 Abu Sayyaf, which is this Filipino terrorist organization in the southern Philippines, came across in gunboats. She was staying in one of those bamboo nipa huts, climbed up the stairs, came into the room, shot her husband 8 times, right? Grabbed her, broke her arm on the way out, dragging her out into the speedboat, and then spirited her back away into, like 20, 30 minutes away by speedboat is the pretty lawless Sulu Archipelago, which is this very restive area of Muslim insurgency down in the far reaches of the Philippines. And that's where I had spent almost 18 months advising the Philippine military on various combat operations, trying to take this group out. So I was kind of just couch surfing at the time in Hong Kong with friends, just kind of waiting out, and figuring out exactly the timing of my next steps and whatnot. My mother had traveled to Taiwan, and so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll go see my mother. And then so she had called me about it when I was in Hong Kong, but I was like, I don't really know them, and I was like, that sounds horrible. And at that time, it hadn't been confirmed as Abu Sayyaf, but I knew as soon as I heard the case, because I'd been down there in that region so much, I knew it was them. Yeah. And so I flew out to Taiwan. They asked, oh, well, it turns out that nobody's really helping them, right? Because Taiwan doesn't have really formal state-to-state relations with the Philippines. So the anti-kidnapping police who was assigned to the case just were talking to some Interpol officers, and the Chang family, the sister, my mother's best friend, had flown over, and was just like, look, nobody's telling us anything. We don't really know what's going on, et cetera, right? So I decided to agree to just meet for a breakfast and just see if I could just give them some context. I wasn't planning to help or anything, right? Just chat. And the whole Chang clan basically came out. There's 10 of them, I remember, at this breakfast. And I mean, they were just so desperate, right? I mean, just no answers. I mean, who you can imagine, right? Who does it happen to that, you go on holiday, and then you're kidnapped by Filipino terrorists and taken back into a jungle camp, right? Yeah. So, my heart reached out to them. So I started to make some phone calls to previous contacts and whatnot. Each phone call I made, it turned out that the people that could help were not in this, they weren't in the same positions anymore that could directly help, but they knew the guy. And in Asia, as you know, business is all done face to face, and it's all about friendship first and relationships. And so I couldn't just get on the phone and just talk to somebody for the first time and ask them to help, right? And as I just continued looking into this, I realized, well, why don't I just do a little bit more? Because this is, they really don't have anybody helping them. So the next step was I got on a plane and went to Manila to go meet them face to face to just organize the right people and then connect them. But then as we met, then they, would only feel comfortable talking to me. And oh man, this thing just continued as it pulled on the string.
So you just got sucked in.
I just got sucked in, yeah. And and then of course, over a period of time, willingly, and just, realizing that, this thing it became so complex that I did realize that if I pulled out, it would just completely fail. I couldn't just outsource this.
You're holding it together.
Yeah, I was holding it together. And so the short of it is that basically I was able to secure the support of Filipino Scout Rangers, which is an elite Filipino Army unit, and also tap into a network through Matt Pecco, and he was one of the first people I called. And he's at Credit Suisse, and he's like helping me quarterback this thing while I'm in Manila.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we were able to secure the support of Western private military contractors. I think the most amazing thing about this is the Chang family had no money really to pay the ransom, which had started out at $10 million. Right. And we had to negotiate that thing down into the six figures somewhere, which was an incredible up and down process. This is a very long story, so I'm just going to cut through it to it.
Sure.
The thing that I want to highlight is that I was able eventually to recruit both of these organizations, which didn't trust each other and were at odds the entire time, right? To do this entirely at no cost, right? I just kept on playing to their sense of, just sympathy for the situation, goodwill, yeah. And so I like highlighting the story is that in the middle of all of this is two things. One is I don't look at this as a evil, a good evil situation, right? Those people down there are in unbelievable destitute poverty and they can't see any route out. I just feel that we were born by luck and fate on opposite teams. We're just on different teams, right? And they kidnapped one of mine, so to speak, and we faced off each other as opponents, on this field. It's not really about good or evil. It's just about where the cards fell. The second thing is in the middle of this whole thing, of course, from our perspective, which is this horrible, tragic, and horrible event, is in the middle of it, you get to see some of the best attributes of people, of these heroes that kind of stood up. So many people stood up as volunteers to help save Evelyn, and bring her back. And you can, in many ways, it's in the worst scenarios is where oftentimes mankind shows its best attributes.
Yeah.
Right, because of that stark contrast of the background and the context. So there's certain aspects here that there's quite a few NDAs in place. So I usually apologize if I bleed over this part, but essentially these two groups were organized to go in and affect the recovery, and there were actions and subsequent actions that resulted in, according to the Philippine military, 36 KIA, right? And that's what gives a lot of spectacular aspects of the story. Although, to be honest, the things that I did as an American Special Forces guy was way more intense than this. But it comes off like this because of the media story. And when we returned to Taiwan, this attracted a ton of attention because I was a completely unknown entity as the nephew of the sitting president of Taiwan. And so this story had taken up a tremendous amount of media attention because this just doesn't happen to Taiwanese people, right? It's a very safe place.
Yeah.
And I think in the States people are kidnapped all the time. I don't know about by Filipino terrorists, but there are roughly about 16 or 17 people, I think even today, that are still held by the Abu Sayyaf.
Really?
There's a Japanese guy who's been down there for like 10 years, right? It's very hard to get them out of that jungle camp. This was one of the fastest recorded recoveries of a kidnapping victim from Abu Sayyaf, from what I understand.
So how long was she?
She was there for 35 days.
Right.
Yeah, 35 days. Yeah. So when we returned to Taiwan, this was such a big story already in Taiwan, and it was just such a shock to Taiwan of returning, and then not only is Evelyn Chang back, but then also the guy that brought her back is this unknown nephew of the sitting president who was a West Pointer and Special Forces team leader, and people's just imaginations and minds were like, yeah.
It's
And
the sort
so,
of thing you see in a film, isn't it?
yeah, right. It's just like, it's almost like, what? And then, actually I immediately left and went to Bali to just go chill out.
Yeah.
And then, I was all over the newspapers in Taiwan for like a week straight. And so that created a lot of the media buzz around the story they kind of see around the internet now and stuff. But what I kind of tied this all together, at least for Black Panda, is that that actually started that whole event, as I started getting involved in it, it actually gave me that whole sense of clarity and sense of purpose that I felt was quite missing in the last 4 years as I was kind of meandering my way through private sector and trying to find like, what is my purpose now, right? Yeah. So after after we got back to Taiwan, I took some time out, went to Bali just to relax, and it was just time for New Year's as well. So just kind of de-stress, because obviously it was very stressful for the 35 days. And when I was there, I was contemplating the entire event and realized actually I felt very alive and had regained a bit of sense of that clarity and task and purpose that had left me feeling very confused and angry for some reason as well after I left the military, and that inspired me actually to look at that a little bit more closely by way of what was it that made me feel so energized throughout this case. And I realized there's the sense of altruism of helping somebody with your specific skill set, right, that maybe others cannot do, and gives you that kind of the sense of self-worth, came around for me in the aspect of crisis response. And it's incredibly rewarding to help somebody in a time of need like that, and it binds you emotionally together, right? You're able to keep somewhat of an arm's length away from the emotional cloud that occurs during crisis when you're the person in crisis, or have the loved one, or whatever situation. But you're very emotionally involved as well. It becomes your crisis as well. And while cyber crisis, cyber attacks are not as emotionally charged as something like a physical crisis, there is absolutely an aspect of that. It's very invasive, right? When somebody hacks you and is throughout your systems and or ransomware all your data. I mean, when we respond to clients, like their looks on their faces, I mean, they are emotionally, harmed by that. And it's very important, obviously, to have the right bedside manner, but we care genuinely to come help solve this problem. And for me, I believe that at Black Panda, we've been able to recreate a bit of that sense of task and purpose and calling, is that we have this very specific skill set to help you, when your hair is on fire, when somebody has come in and violated you, like this, and essentially, or your company is in crisis due to, a massive, maybe a ransomware attack that is causing massive business interruption loss for you. This is something that for us has meant a bit of a calling, in that sense as well. There's a very strong sense of mission and purpose, is that for us, we want to be the best guys, in Asia. And that the name's Black Panda synonymous is when you have this problem, you call us, right? And we'll show up at your door and help you through this thing, right? So,
It's one of the, having recruited in cyber now for coming up to 8 years, it is one thing that I have noticed. There's a lot of ex-military that have transitioned into cyber, and I think it's one of the wonderful things about the industry, that it has given a path for the military, ex-military that want to, transition into civilization again. It's obviously it's very well documented that people sort of struggle with that, and I think it's it's really wonderful that they do have that route. I mean, what is it you think about, sort of ex-military? I mean, you've touched on a bit already, but what are the sort of the fundamentals you think that they gain from the military that makes them a good sort of incident responder or threat intel officer? Yeah.
So definitely one of the aspects I always like to talk about is that, cybersecurity is not an IT problem. It's a security problem, right? It's not a computer that's hacking you on their side. It's a human being. And the human being has friends, colleagues, organization, and different desired end states and strategies according to what their objectives are. And so when you start realizing and thinking about it from that perspective, people from the military, and especially somebody like myself who has a very formal computer science education background, plus real world tactical security and military experience, it's just an extension. Cyber is just an extension of the physical security world to me, right? There's still avenues of approach, obstacles, cover and concealment. These basics, key terrain, these basics of military tactics play out in the cyber realm as well. So it's a directly translatable skill from not the technical standpoint, right, but from a strategic standpoint, right? And so I think it's attractive to former military or law enforcement because it's literally just an extension from the physical world into the digital world, right? And so, certainly from a crisis response aspect, I think there's also a personality. There's a personality pairing there as well, right? There's an oversimplification that you might hear military and law enforcement talk about the world by way of sheep and sheepdogs and wolves, right? And that you're the sheepdog. I think it's a little bit patronizing, but if you use that analogy, that people in the military and law enforcement like to think of themselves as those sheepdogs protecting the flock. Yeah. And so whether in a physical realm or whether in a cyber realm, it is fulfilling that same sense of task and purpose again that I was talking about earlier. So I think it attracts that aspect. And certainly the skill sets, that you learn by way of process and SOPs, right? And making sure that you have execution checklists, making sure that you rehearse, right? Like these fundamentals don't change from a perspective of physical or cyber security. One of the things that we do at Blackpanda is routinely rehearse incident response alerts, right? Okay. When I was a butter bar lieutenant in Korea, every month there was a random alert siren screaming throughout the camp in case the North Koreans were invading. And we had to jump out of our hooches and sprint down to the company headquarters, get in line, report for accountability, and then move on out, get in our tanks, and then roll out to the border, right? And that was something we did every single month. I mean, it was like clockwork. We were ready, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah. Like you can't. The time to prepare for crisis is not when the crisis happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're way too late. And so I think that's a lot of the secret sauce, when it comes to that military background or special forces background. It's in the planning and the preparation.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've planned out all the contingencies, all the branches and sequels. You've thought through everything and done the analysis. So when the unexpected occurs, it's not actually unexpected. You've already thought through it. Yeah. So sometimes people say like, oh, wow, like special forces, there's nothing really that different other than the fact that meticulous, in my opinion, the core aspect is that meticulous planning and analysis that makes that guy look really smart immediately. Yeah. It's just because he's thought through it already.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. It's kind of ingrained in their DNA from all of the training.
Yeah, or he's actually prepared for the crisis already.
Yeah.
So he's making decisions much faster because they've already gone through the thought process, where other people facing it the first time, maybe the first time they've ever even thought about this scenario, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. When you
put it like that, it's almost like there's no better person for the job, isn't there? An incident responder. Almost.
Well, yeah. I mean, certainly, I'm inspired right now by some of the people in our recruiting pipeline who have military backgrounds or FBI backgrounds and this sort of thing, and then are getting, their masters at SANS. You're getting like these sort of people now coming through of combining the two sides. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very powerful, right? Is when you cross and overlap two industries, skill sets like that and bring them together. Yeah. That person is quite valuable. Sure. Now, that's not to say that somebody who is just a pure incident responder cannot develop these skills. And there's absolutely an aspect of that in just the field of itself, because it draws a lot, the parallels from the two sides. Yeah. Again, for me, it's the same arena that you're playing in, right? Yeah. It's just different terrain, as I like to call it, right? Whether it be jungle, desert, urban, all these things have the same principles in physical as they do in cyber. It's just another terrain that you're addressing.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. You're just in server rooms instead.
That's right. Yeah.
Going back to when you had the idea, what was it that made you want to start up your own company? Because it's quite a daunting thing, especially for if you've just coming back into civilization, you've tried your hand at trading. What was it that made you think I'm actually going to I want to start a company rather than interviewing for companies? Yeah,
definitely for me, I think that working at other companies was a great experience. Allowed me to kind of dabble my my feet in the water, so to speak, of private sector. But I've always just kind of wanted to do my own thing, right? You know what I mean? Like just kind of like blaze my own path, so to speak. So Obviously, it very much remains to be seen if Blackpanda will continue on, right? And anything can happen, right? But I think that for me, personality-wise, just drawn to it from the aspect of having the freedom of creativity, right? And being able to come up with your own idea and then see it through from end to end. And that was attractive to me by way of the freedom aspects, because when I think about my financial goals and whatnot, it's not about, I just want to make a ton of money. I want to make money so that I can be free to make the choices that I want to make in my life. And I realized that I could make a lot of money, in finance. I could make a lot of money in tech, but I wouldn't have the same amount of freedom ultimately if I had otherwise just started my own thing, right? Obviously, I make less money on a day-to-day basis, at the current stage of the startup versus what I was making in those other industries, but I have vastly more freedom in my life, right? Vastly.
Yeah.
And so from a quality of life standpoint and balance, I think that I'm winning out on that, which comes back around to our number one core value at Blackpanda.
For sure. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. I mean, in terms of the future of Blackpanda, I mean, what do you see? Yeah, what are the sort of the objectives?
Yeah, so for us right now, we've made a lot of headway in the insurance industry, because I do believe that one of the aspects of cybersecurity, particularly incident response, but overall cybersecurity, is that we're going to see more and more of a tie-in into the insurance industry. This is something that I happened upon about 4 years ago at Blackpanda, and started engaging with Lloyd's of London, partly due to because of, we're situated in Hong Kong and Singapore, the strong ties back to London, of course, for business. And made my way out there several times to meet with them. And so I believe now, quite fundamentally, that insurance is just a form of security, or security is a form of insurance, right? They're interchangeable in that sense. Nothing in the world, if you imagine from a physical standpoint, and I always like describing cyber in physical analogies, because everything in the physical world for safety and security, any term that exists in that world, if you put the word cyber in front of it, exists. It's just called something different by engineers, right?
Yeah.
And it can be very confusing for the layman to come in. But if you start pairing these together, then it becomes a little bit more clear of the interchangeability, or the aspects of all of this just being in the realm of security. Anyway, so in the physical world, I think everybody understands nothing can be 100% secure in the physical world. But for some reason, people think, why isn't this 100% secure in the cyber world, right? And somebody gets breached, and then the poor IT guy just immediately gets fired, right? Yeah. Especially here in Asia, right? Yeah. And so, what I want to bring around with that is that the physical world, so with insurance, insurance to me is covering the final bit of residual risk, right? So nothing can be 100% secure, but let's say that your preventative measures or your castle walls are covering 90 to 95% of your security. Well, what's your hedge behind that if they break through the walls?
Yeah.
You need to have the firefighters, the emergency responders on standby outside of your castle walls. That's where Blackpanda comes into play. Then the damage that Blackpanda was able to suppress, there's still some residual damage, possibly left over from that. That's where the insurance comes in and helps pay for those costs, right, which attempts to mitigate away that last bit of residual risk as close as possible to 100%. It's still not full, right? Yeah. Your insurance policy may not cover everything. Just because you've just had indemnity, cover your business interruption loss, or paid for your GDPR fine or your or the ransom, you've still taken damage, right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing around that. So you didn't mitigate away or transfer all the cyber risk. Yeah. But that's just about as close as it can get to me, right? Yeah. It's having a full, managed security service or IT service provider providing your castle walls, however high that you need them to be for your purposes, having a proper incident responder on standby as your hedge, right, to mitigate the damage as fast as possible, and also help you piece through the rubble to figure out exactly how to best patch up the holes of how they got in. Sure. And then that insurance product coming in and paying for those damages. So that is something that we're exploring much deeper on the insurance side. We do have plans in Q4 to launch a sister company called Pandematics Underwriting, which has its own InsurTech AI platform within it. And we should be good to go with our, as an MGA, Managing General Agent, which is described as holding the pen of the underwriter. Right? All the capital is provided by Lloyd's of London in this situation, and then we do the actual underwriting itself. And our license is currently planned to be out of Hong Kong, and we're working on Singapore as well. And yeah, we want to be able to provide that insurance product as well with Blackpanda attached as the responders. And kind of I call this the last mile. Right. Like, you know, so many products in such a huge industry of cybersecurity prevention. My DNA is in crisis response, and so I want to be that hedge, your backup solution that you have on standby. Right?
That sounds great. That's another one of the healthy things I think about the industry, because it is a relatively new industry. There's so much kind of headspace and scale for, you know, innovating and kind of new ideas, new products, new service lines. So that's it's very very inspirational. And how big is the company now?
So we're currently 12 people.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So we're quite lean. And to be honest, I would like to keep the company as small as possible for like forever. I
guess it comes down to the quality of life. You know, the lifestyle aspect would start to kind of, you'd be sort of diminishing on that as the company gets bigger and bigger and more responsibility.
We're getting ready to go into our Series A fundraising in the next 6 months to 9 months or so, and after the raise is done, I believe we'll have to expand from there a bit, but for the most part, would like to try to keep the company as efficient and lean as possible, right? Yeah.
And you're obviously still quite involved in hiring directly. You're probably sort of, I don't know, towards the end of the interview process. Yeah. What are the key things that you sort of look for? What are I'm sure you don't want to give all your questions away now, but what are the sort of the fundamentals, characteristics that you kind of look to kind of uncover?
Yeah. So actually, I would love to just even talk about our recruiting process very briefly. So, so we have, I've written actually in the bylaws of Blackpanda that we've democratized our hiring process. So meaning that even as a CEO founder, like I don't have the power to just hire somebody unilaterally, right? Everybody who interviews this individual needs to give a very strong, resounding yes. And I care about that because it gives a sense of, well, everybody at Blackpanda pretty much, except for our interns, have ESOPs, right? So there's already a skin in the game by way of stake in the company. But also, and actually several Blackpanda folk who have come on afterwards have invested equity themselves into the company as well. Sure. So quite a bit of skin in the game as it is, and that helps contribute to the unity and sense of the sense of cohesion in our company. But also this aspect of ownership, is that you get to decide with the same vote that I do whether this person is somebody that we want to spend all this time with, right? We literally spend more time with our colleagues than we do with our families, right? It's crazy, right? The world is completely backwards in this, but that's the reality of what it is. And it matters. It matters to be around people that you enjoy being around, right? And that you value as intellectual, as competent, as, all these things contribute to the quality of your life. And again, tying back to our number one value of balance. So that's one aspect, and then so we have a couple of interviews that one is technical, one is cultural, and then one is technical, one is a CV review, and then there's a case study usually, right? And that's the one that usually, and we love this as well, is when people are like, case study, like I'm so senior, I do this and this, and they're like, I'm not doing case study. Great, please go ahead.
Off you go. Off you go.
Great, right? It's an easy filter for us right off the bat, because we want as any company does, but we really focus on that, is we want you to want to be at this company, right? And that is a bit of a haze just to see, do you really want to be here? And it's a really fast way.
That's a really good filter, I think, to have, because you know that they're probably not going to be willing to sort of roll up their sleeves and
Exactly, right? Do you have the humility, which is also one of our major core values, humility. Do you have the humility to do this case study and then to come before a group of people who are just going to intellectually challenge you and spar with you, for an hour to see whether or not we think that you're worthy to stand here next to us, right? And so I'm always the final interview, which largely for mine is a culture check, right? Again, I believe so much in the harmony of the company. Having built so many teams, in organizations in my career, I've come to realize a lot of times there's this classic situation where you have this superstar on your team who ends up acting like a prima donna.
Yeah.
And you have this, but they're so important, they're so good. No, my lesson learned for that is every time cut that head off.
Really?
Cut that head off.
Yeah.
If I would much rather have people who are, obviously I don't want mediocre people, but people who are, above average versus a few superstars.
Yeah. Like work ethic over talent.
Cohesion, above all, right?
Yeah.
And having that, everybody being in sync and having that collaboration, open communication, I think is so critical in terms of team building. And so for me, the last check is basically around, trying to dig into the personality a little bit more and seeing whether or not you're the right culture fit with the existing team. And I think that's very important actually for people who are recruiting is, because one of the things of our whole education system is that we are brainwashed to seek approval from others and validation from others, right?
Yeah.
Even completely subjective topics like writing, and somebody literally writes and tells you this is
even
bad.
more so nowadays with things like social media.
You're
that's
right.
Really
you're
kind
right.
of magnified it, I think.
That's a good point, and yeah, that's a great point, especially for younger folk coming up. And so I think that a lot of times people come through the recruiting process and view that the same way as well, kind of like admissions into a college, right? It's like, you didn't get into Stanford, like, well, you must be dumb, or you aren't smart enough to be in, to get into, to the school. You're not smart enough. No, you just didn't meet the criteria, particularly for this organization in their admissions process, right? Which they're certainly selecting for certain things, which doesn't value you, right? Yeah. And so I would just comment that, for us, Blackpanda is a very unique organization. And then so if the culture fit didn't work or the recruiting, didn't come through for you, that's not a mark on you. It's just, you just weren't a fit into what we are, right? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's really important to tell people because, and that's something that for me also required stepping out as an entrepreneur to kind of break through that mold of that mindset, right? Yeah. Is that I don't need approval from individuals, or organizations as an entrepreneur. The only thing I care about is what the market says. Yeah. Right. The market doesn't lie, and they're brutal with you as well.
Yeah.
Very, very candid and honest. But that's the only real opinion that I care about. Yeah. And so I think that's important just to communicate to people recruiting, and maybe, especially if they're having a challenge and feeling down on themselves from a self-esteem standpoint. Sure. It's not that. It's the organizations. It's just not the right fit. Yeah. You don't want to be in that. You don't want to be in the organization that you weren't the right fit for, because you're going to have a very hard time succeeding or even enjoying your day-to-day life anyway. Right. Yeah. So I think that's very, if I could communicate that, kind of encouragement, is getting the right fit is just as important for you, if not more important for you.
Yeah. That's good. That's awesome. That's really sort of inspirational. I think a lot of people would to take a lot of interest in that, particularly people that are sort of growing a company or even team leader in a big company. That's really interesting. What sort of because there's times like this is when people are starting to think about, maybe I should quit my job, or maybe they've lost their job and they've had that kind of burning sort of idea in the back of their mind, and they haven't had the courage to, start up their own company. What advice would you give, people that are looking to set up their own company?
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly, you have to make sure your idea is as well researched as you possibly can be. I have a favorite quote from Mike Tyson, of all people. He says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Right? Yeah, I'm familiar with that one. It's actually so wise, right?
Yeah, it is.
But the point is that not because your plan is going to be perfect and it's going to work out exactly like that, but it doesn't cost you really very much to plan. You know what I mean? And that can be done even while you have your current job and your income coming in, because capital is your lifeblood, right? Cash is king, blah, 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 all these, these cliches, but it really is true, right? Especially as a startup. And so before the moment that you would invest any of your own risk, i.e. quitting your job and then starting on this, do as much research as possible. And I don't mean just Googling things. Go out and sell the idea as though you already have the company. Okay. Right? That doesn't cost you anything. Yeah. Yeah. Are you being kind of misleading the person? Kind of. But it doesn't cost you anything just to talk about the idea with a little bit of, just frame it as the authority that already exists, just to get the market feedback. Right. Soft sell it. Right. Soft sell it.
Okay,
and what if they say like, I want to buy that right now? We're like, oh well, then just be honest, like, oh well, be ready in maybe like 3 to 6 months or something. But thank you for your feedback. You know what I mean? Like, just going out and doing that sort of research, the market research, not academic research, right?
Sure.
Actually selling the idea, seeing what partnership you can, doing as much as you possibly can, getting set up to the point that that now this has legs, right? This possibly has come together.
Sure.
Because Blackpanda is actually the second company I attempted starting. The first one was a mixed martial arts clothing line, which is violating all sorts of ideas that I'm talking about right now.
Right.
Which is why I'm like, a lot of I actually generally try to only give advice for things that I've made mistakes on.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. So it's a segue, because when people give you advice, I believe when people give you advice of things they've succeeded on, I think a lot of it is just self-validation of things, versus
exactly. I mean, those are the crucial lessons that you learn when it fails. It's very, very common. Entrepreneurs, it's often their like 7th or 8th time. Go at it.
I think it's a more honest advice, right? Because it's like, this didn't work.
These are the pitfalls.
Yeah, here's the pitfalls, right? Versus like, look how awesome I was, and so I would do as much as humanly possible as a singleton, to the point that literally you're bursting with the opportunity before either bringing in a buddy. I didn't, and what I was about to say was that for my first company, and even a bit with Blackpanda, I didn't have the confidence to start it by myself first, in some ways, so obviously I needed Matt. It was huge in terms of my co-founder and all that stuff. What I mean is outside of the founding team. Yeah. Right. Of possibly trying to build as more, at the beginning, so to speak. Would give you more freedom and leverage down the road.
Sure.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Well. Thank you so much for sharing the Blackpanda story, and long may you continue to have lots of success.
Thank you.
You're a very inspirational figure, and thank you very much for sharing the story and the background and how it came to be. Oh, another thing I've learned about you is that you're a jiu-jitsu junkie as well.
Yeah.
How long have you been involved in jiu-jitsu?
So technically over 20 years, right? With long breaks in between, but I've been training, a lot of injuries, right? Broken, like it was, emergency spinal surgery, which is this lovely scar I have on my neck.
Right.
Almost left me paralyzed, Battle scars, a couple torn ACLs, and but it's a labor of love. I mean, I'm actually going to go train this afternoon. Jiu-jitsu for me is a great outlet of what I believe is a form of mindfulness.
Yeah. That's awesome. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much again for sharing. It's great to see you, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Thank you, Evian.
All right. Take care. Thanks.